Don't forget to please mute yourself if you're not. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you may take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Thank you and welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Afterlife Contact session. And if you can make your video visible, please do. I prefer to see people I'm talking to, but I have an important question, which is, how many of you have not done this technique before? Because that will affect how much of an intro I do. So raise your physical hand or raise your digital hand, please. So we know, okay, we have one, thank you, Keith, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I will do a little intro here, and that's just fine. So this is, again, called the Afterlife Contact session. I've done this with thousands of parents now over the years. At the conferences, we'll do 400 or 500 at a time, and 75% of people report a meaningful experience, that is, visit with their child the first time through. Now, if you don't, don't worry about it. For some people, it takes a little practice. Some people have to release deep guilt and anger and pain before they can have a good experience. So the article for this is article number 9 at soulproof.com, called Visiting with Your, quote, Departed Loved One Now. And the quote is, you realize they're not really departed. I mean, so much of what we used to believe about life, death, and the afterlife is just wrong. Life is happening right now. It's just that different space-time dimensions or experiences are occurring in different frequencies, different energy levels, some of which can't be detected by the human brain. It doesn't mean they don't exist. They do exist. So quite likely your children, if you've had more than one, is right beside you and right beside you right now, especially for this experience. So that's really important to know. Next year, we will do at least quarterly classes like this. When we did this a few weeks ago, several parents had just astounding experiences, just like off the charts. And I'm talking big transformations too, just a shift from pain and sadness and trouble getting going to like, okay, I get it. What am I going to, what can I do here? How do I proceed best? Know that I see the big picture of life. So we decided to do these at least quarterly, and more often if there's sufficient interest or demand. The other thing I'll mention is that starting next year, the Ask the Soul Doctor classes will be the second Monday of each month instead of the first. So some tips for having an optimal session, and these are described at the end of Article 9. And so if you use this at home, um, make sure you read that. And let's just take a moment, especially as some people filter in, I'll take a moment to show the resources that are important for you to know. So, so here we are at soulproof.com. And you're looking at the top tab here, which says articles. And I mentioned article number 9, visit with your departed loved ones now. Another article on afterlife contacts, which some people call after death communications, is article number 28 to help you understand just how very common these visits are. Dr. Raymond Moody says about 70% of parents report sensing their child in more than one way. But in all the talks I've given, uh, that number is really very close to 100%. So if you've not had a contact, and if you don't after tonight, email me, mark@soulproof.com, and we'll look at what's blocking you, what's holding you up from having a great visit. The other top tab I want to point out to you is under shop, because this is where the audio program is for this. All right, so here's the Afterlife Contact session at the low, low price of 0.00. And this is there are 2 tracks here. First, the introductory track, which goes into more than I can tonight in this short hour we have, and then a full 45-minute session. So I really recommend using this at home. This will give you the deepest experience. And the last thing I'll mention is the Greater Reality Healing, Living, and Helping program. This is not designed to replace helping parents heal in any way, not that we could. However, the passing of a child usually doesn't occur in a vacuum. So many people have, gosh, I just worked with a client last week. Her dad passed, her brother passed, her son passed. She found out her husband had been abusing their daughters. This all happened in a relatively short period of time. And that's when she realized she needed some extra help and had attended one of these programs. So that's what this is designed for. All sorts of losses, financial, health, etc., especially when you have 2 or more in a short period of time. So I wanted to share those resources with you. So now some tips for having an optimal experience. If I can find my notes, I have so many windows bouncing around here. There we go. First of all, know that your child is near and probably trying to contact you. I say probably because, we can't assume 100%. They may be busy right now doing something, but there's good evidence that your child can multi-locate. I discussed that in article number 75, I believe. That is your child's energy, because that's what we each really are, beings in energy consciousness. Yeah, article number 75. And so without the limiting brain to deal with, our loved ones in the next phase of life can usually experience more than one time and place simultaneously. So don't worry about bugging them, and good chance, they'll make a point of being there for you during this visit. The biggest thing you can do to enjoy a different but very real ongoing relationship with your child is to choose day by day higher energy emotions, thoughts, words, and ways of being. So you're more on the same wavelength as them. And I discussed this in Article 108, as well as Article number 9 that I mentioned. We'll start off with a standard induction process, contracting, relaxing about five major groups, counting backwards from 10 to 1, see yourself crossing a bridge and so on, things like that. These are all designed just to quiet your brain. Why? Because the brain thinks it knows everything, but it actually perceives with the five senses much less than 1% of reality. So, one of the biggest ways to understand more about life and how it is that a child can pass in a loving, intelligent universe is to turn off your brain and get in touch with the rest of your consciousness that understands the big picture of life and understands why that can be. In fact, it's a good thing in the long term. And if this is recent, if your grief is raw and deep right now, I apologize if that sounds glib or non-based, but this is what the evidence shows. In other words, there is a timing. Souls pass the right time, the right way, and many of these kids are more evolved souls. They didn't have to do the whole earth walk. So important to understand that. So you're on that higher energy wavelength where they are in realms characterized by peace, joy, love, and light. We'll do two 6-minute visits with silence. And so you can visit your child 2 different visits, or if you've had more than one child pass, or maybe you want to visit with your child and then later with another loved one. So up to you. Know that the experience may seem subtle, ethereal, imaginary. That's very, very normal, and that's your brain still thinking. Even though we go through a deep induction process, your brain's still saying, this could just be your imagination. You could be making this up. So when you hear that, just say, yeah, I've been forewarned. Shut up for a little while, will you? Also know that during your visit, time may proceed as it usually does on Earth, or that time might seem like a fraction of a second, or it may seem like much longer than 6 minutes. So just know that time will reveal its relatively illusory nature. Another really important key is to let your perceptions float up or pop in. So this is in your brain. So I say, see, hear, feel your child. It's not the brain saying, what do I detect here? Yeah, it's your brain. Again, your brain is pretty clueless in many ways. You want these perceptions just to float up, pop in. Use all of your senses, see, hear, feel, know, even smell. Fragrance, for example, you associate with your child. And don't be tied to my verb. So if I say, see yourself walking down the steps and you're not a visually oriented person, you can feel yourself going down the steps. You can know you're walking down the steps. If you have an object of theirs nearby, some people found it's useful to have it on your person. You don't want to hold it in your hand because that will require you to, make a fist, and that keeps you less relaxed. But just put it on your lap or have it in your pocket or something like that, since sometimes objects will retain energy. And also, it's just a reminder, a connecting point. Maybe a little easier for your child to ping you, to contact you. I will mention your spiritual support team. If this is part of your belief system, as it is for me, angels, guides, master teachers, and the light. Or you could just envision higher energies, more evolved energies helping you. So you can sense them in any way they pop up. Likewise, your child. Your child may come in as he or she appears now, as he or she appeared as a little child. Um, just let that pop up. Don't try to control it. Why are they coming in at that age, or looking like that? Well, there's probably a good reason for it. Now, when we have a group like this, the group energy can enhance the experience, where some people have a better experience when they're alone at home and a longer session and um, maybe able to control things a little better. So both are good. Before the session, we'll be doing about 30-minute session. So if you have to go to the bathroom during that period, now is a good time to do it. Drink of water so you wet your whistle. If you think you might cry, have Kleenex and use some chapstick. Also make sure you have electronics off, except for the smart device you're using now. Um, Pets, some people are comforted by their pets, but it's really better not to have a cat or a dog jumping up in your lap or jumping up because that can distract you from this deep, deep relaxation. So better to have them in another part of the house. And finally, if there's anyone else in your home, just tell them, hey, I'm going to do this meditation. Please don't interrupt. So any questions or concerns before we begin? Raise your hand, please, and attend to those different things I mentioned. Going once, going twice. All right. So let's go ahead and get ready to begin. And now you can go ahead and block your video so you don't have to worry about sitting there because your mouth will be parted open slightly. And we want to make sure everybody's audio is off. Looks like they are. So go ahead and sit up straight, please, is ideal. If you're lying down, you might snooze off, which we don't want. Beginning to breathe slowly and deeply, focusing on my voice. Let's begin. Eyes closed, breathing slowly and deeply, and using contraction relaxation, starting with the feet. Take a deep breath in, and as you hold your breath, tighten those muscles in your legs and feet. Hold the tension. Hold it, and now let them relax. Now the muscles of the buttocks and stomach. Take a deep breath in and tighten up those muscles as if someone is going to punch you in the stomach. Hold it, and exhale and relax. Now the muscles of the chest and shoulders. Take a deep breath in and tense those muscles. Hold the tension, hold it, and let them drop and relax. Now, muscles of the hands and arms. Take a deep breath in and clench both your fists, tensing up your hand and arm muscles. Hold that tension, hold it, and let them drop. And finally, deep breath in and clench your facial muscles. Clench your jaw, squeeze your eyes together. Hold it, and let those muscles relax. Good. Now take a moment, and if there are any areas of your body that feel tense, simply contract and relax those on your own, please. Now, picture, imagine, visualize yourself standing at the top of a staircase. And with my count from 10 to 1, sense yourself slowly, securely going down the stairs. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Standing before an ornately decorated door, and you know this door represents a gateway to an even deeper state of consciousness, relaxation. With my count from 3 to 1, see yourself easily opening the door and stepping through. 3, 2, 1. On the other side now, and seeing before you a path, and taking a moment to luxuriate in your senses. Seeing this beautiful path through the woods, hearing birds singing, feeling light sunlight on your skin and the rustle of breeze, smelling flowers and fragrant plants, feeling so good, so peaceful, so relaxed. And as you continue to breathe slowly and deeply and focusing on my voice, sense yourself walking along this path now with anticipation about a visit with your beloved child who is now living in a different phase of forever. As you walk along, you hear before you see a shallow stream, a babbling brook. And as you approach it, you see a small bridge that goes over it. With my count from 10 to 1, sense yourself slowly, securely stepping across the bridge. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On the other side of the stream, you find a comfortable bench that's waiting just for you. And as you take a seat, you find yourself surrounded by your spiritual support team, your angels, guides, master teachers, who are there to assist you to have an optimal experience. They shield and guide you with good and God, love and light, so you're protected during this experience and always. Feel them giving you a healing shower that washes away lower energy emotions, sadness, anger, guilt, for example, and fill you with higher energy ones, peace, joy, love, gratitude. Just take a moment and soak this in as you prepare. Good. And now after I count from 5 to 1, allow the first contact to unfold. Prepare to see your children who have changed worlds. Hear their voices. Feel their touch and hug. Know their presence and smell their fragrance. We'll have 6 minutes of silence to let this visit unfold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. just another minute for any additional contact in this session. Good. And now picture yourself back on the bench with your spiritual support team around you, congratulating you for being courageous enough to try. Again, washing away any lower energy emotions, sadness, self-blame, anger, and filling you with higher ones, helping you know more deeply that love and life are eternal, and that you can continue a different relationship with your beloved ones. So take a moment to soak that up and prepare for a second visit. And now, after I count from 5 to 1, allow a second contact to unfold. Prepare to see your children who have changed worlds. Hear their voice. Feel their touch and hug. Know their presence and smell their fragrance. Followed by 6 minutes of silence. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. And now just another minute to wrap up this part of the visit, knowing that you can use this technique anytime you like. Good. And now it's time to prepare for coming back to the waking state, feeling more peaceful, joyful, grateful, enthusiastic, enlightened. I'm going to count from 1 to 5, and with each count, let yourself gradually come back to the waking state. 1, 2, 3. Feeling the clothing on your body. 4. Wiggling your toes and fingers a bit. And 5. When you're ready, opening your eyes. Welcome back, and if possible, enable your video, please. So while you're getting back with it, I will just mention the two major causes of people not having optimal experiences are, first, you could say, an overly active mind. That could be, it's on scales, that could be anxiety. And so to help with that, I'd recommend article number 77, centering practices. Also article number 12, which is fine-tuning yourself, body, mind, and spirit. And then it's also article number 87 on natural care. So there's improve your self-care and get the natural care you need. So again, articles number 77, 12, and 87. The other most common cause of not having an optimal experience is so much pain and sadness, and it doesn't allow you then to perceive your kids, where they're surrounded by love and light. And the best way to start helping that is the holistic breathing technique, which is described in article number 70. And then again, remember that you can email me, mark@soulproof.com, with your specific questions and challenges, and I'll personalize some recommendations for you. So with that, we have about 15 minutes. I wonder if anyone would like to share what they did or did not experience. And again, if at all possible, I would love to see your smiling faces instead of your name. Let the spirit move you and ask a question. All
Okay,
right, am I gonna have to start calling on people?
I'll try.
All right, thank you, Maria.
Hey, so your meditations are always effective on me because I'm very visual. And the first one, I did see my son Andrew, and the first visit, and with a whole room full of people, Mark. It was like a packed room and full of souls. And but I was mainly, concentrating on him. But he wanted me to share the room. Like he didn't want me to just focus on him.
Mhm.
Um, and he gave me, I felt nature, like nature, vibrant nature. I felt the grass, the sky. And then he gave me a box as a present. And I opened the box, and out of the box came butterflies, a whole
Mm.
bunch of butterflies. And that's symbolic because we did a butterfly release for his memorial. And the second visit, Mark, was very interesting. I didn't expect this. It was like a vignette of all these memories of when Andrew and I went to China. And
Mm.
we had a trip, just me and him. And we went to three different cities. We had a great adventure. We did a lot of stuff together. And it was just all the fun stuff we did. And he was in his 20s at the time. And it was a good trip for me and an adventurous trip. And it's symbolic also because my son loved to travel. So he's showing me, travel and adventure is in his soul and it's in my soul as well. And it was just a memorable trip, but also unexpected. Like I didn't expect that to happen. So it was pretty cool.
Sounds very cool. Thank you very much. The couple things stand out for me on that. First, as you said, I didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm,
And so that helps other people know, this is more than your imagination. It's more than your brain making things up.
mm-hmm,
Secondly, you mentioned the word adventure, and that's such an important one because truly we each are having adventures on Earth.
mm-hmm,
We're not really solid. No one really dies. We can't lose each other. This whole lifetime experience, even if you live to 100, is a blink of an eye in the span of eternity. It's like watching a movie. It's like reading a book. However, we get here, and because of our limited senses, we're so we have such narrow-mindedness in our view, and then we're afraid we're going to die, afraid we lose people, and so on. None of which are true. None of which can even happen um, the way life is set up. So that's one reason I love the teacher Joseph Campbell, who wrote a book called The Hero's Journey. He was interviewed by Bill Moyer. Wonderful if you ever get the chance to hear those interviews. Um, but Joseph Campbell made such a point that that's one reason people like adventure movies and stories and heroes and heroines and knights and damsels in distress. It reminds us what we're doing right now, but oftentimes we forget. So yeah, it's this uh, Helen Keller, who is blind and deaf, said life is either a daring adventure or is nothing at all. And so the more we can remember that, and remember it is a blink of an eye, then the more we can get our money's worth and have this amazing experience, just like your kids are having other experiences in other places, and then you get back in touch. What was your trip like? And now let's take one together. And yeah, thank you. Beautiful. All right, who else would like to share, I wonder?
I could try to share.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, so this is my first time here, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. Um, but I noticed as soon as you said to go talk to our loved one, my eyes started jumping and twitching. It felt like rapid eye movement.
Hmm.
It, it just seemed like there were so many people there and I couldn't take it all in.
Nice. And were you seeing that? Was that your primary sense?
I, I physically felt my eyes jumping around.
Okay. But when you said there were so many people there, couldn't take it all in, how did you sense them?
It felt that my eyes kept looking around,
Ah, okay.
trying to identify everyone, as there were so many people.
And have you indeed have had a lot of people, loved ones, people and pets who have passed?
I have, I
Yeah,
have. So I'm about the last of my family that's left here.
yeah.
So and it was I had written earlier today about my great grandfather giving us apples for Christmas, and my son handed me an apple.
Ah, nice. Nice.
Um,
Um, what's your son's name?
Jeremiah,
Nice name. And when did Jeremiah change worlds?
December 11th of last year.
Okay. Hmm.
He was 29.
Well, if this was your first experience, Amy, it sounds like a pretty good one. If you get anything the first time through, that's a good start.
Well, he's around. I sense him all the time. I've just never done anything like this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is one of the most powerful ways I know to make the contact. So yeah, read the articles. Number,
Thank you for doing this. I'm very grateful.
you are very welcome. And like I say, we'll be having these periodically. You can use this at home, especially there's a list of pre-session recommendations. And then once you do that, it helps set up an even deeper experience. All right, anything else, dear one?
No, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, see you later. Susan, you're up next. If you speak up, Susan, we'll be able to see you.
Hello.
There you are. Hello.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
It's okay. Did you have a question?
Do you have a question? Not particularly. I'm a fan. I
Okay.
really like your work.
Well, thank you. So did you just come in or did you do the experience with us?
No, I missed, I guess, most of what you did.
Okay. Well, this will be recorded and you can watch it. Maybe Lynn will share. It's under the YouTube videos, but basically we just did an afterlife contact session. So if you read article number 9 at soulproof.com, and then the audio program is free under shop, you can do this yourself and enjoy visits with your child. You have a child
Yeah,
who passed?
I do. I do.
What's his or her name?
His name is Dimitri,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't a child when he passed. He was 34,
Yeah.
3.5 years ago.
Well, he's still your child though, right? No matter
Mhm.
what age.
My baby. He was
Yeah.
my baby. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, he still is, and I'm sure he is loving your hair as much as I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Way to be a wild thing.
Well, actually, it's kind of a mission, if you will. Um, 22 years ago, when my sweet baby Dimitri was only about 16, I became vegan, and I'm very passionate about that. And this is a vegan hair color, but
Hmm.
people talk to me because I have pink hair. And so I tell them, thank you. It's a vegan hair color. Going vegan, not going pink. Best change in my life, which is not entirely true. Second best after having children. But
So how is pink a vegan hair color?
Well, it's the brand. So what vegan means is there's no cruelty, which means no animals were involved.
Okay.
Because
All
wherever
right.
animals are involved in a commercial operation, and it's extreme cruelty to those animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's more
Yeah.
than just not eating animal products. It's also not buying leather,
I got
not
it.
buying something
Yeah.
with
Okay. We can't. Yeah, I can see you are passionate about it. All
I
right.
am. I
Well,
am.
lovely meeting you. I hope to see you again later.
Thank you. Thank you. That would be wonderful. Sorry I'm so late.
That's okay.
But
Nice
thank
meeting.
you for talking with me.
Better late than never. You ever hear that
Yeah.
one?
Oh, absolutely.
All
Article
right.
9, right?
Nicole, you're up next.
Hi. Well, this was my first time joining as well. Um, I struggle with questioning the whole time as the things that I'm visualizing or I don't want to say seeing, or that it's that I'm telling myself this is what he would say to me, or this is what he would want me to do or be doing. And
Right.
that's, I wrestled even while in the middle of it. I'm like, is this me or is this him or is this me projecting these
Sure.
thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's why I forewarned you in the introduction. I said, get ready. The brain, there's an old saying from Hinduism, the brain is a wonderful slave, but a horrible master. And so if you use your brain to help you get around on Earth and function, great. But if you rely on your brain for many parts of life, um, it's not a good thing. So the first time through, that sense of I could be making all this up, it can be strong. So don't worry about it. And maybe how long ago did your child pass, and what's his or her name?
His name is Jack, and it's been about a year and a half.
Okay. So have you used the holistic breathing technique yet? Ah, that one.
No, no.
Okay. Yeah. So see article number 70, and it talks about this technique and a wonderful way to get more relaxed, which means getting rid of the pain and all, guilt and things that typically go with the parent's experience. And that'll help clear you out more. And then when you use the afterlife contact session again, it's more likely your brain will be more quiet and you'll be able to have more experience. So I'm curious, even with your questioning, so you sensed him some, but you were just saying, well, this is my projection, right?
Yeah, well, when you say picture yourself going over the bridge, and so I'm like doing those steps, and then I feel like everything I'm picturing is me picturing it and me putting it there.
Okay.
And then towards the end, and I've tried meditation a lot. I mean, I had to try to almost daily do guided meditation or some sort of thing like that. And my mind's constantly racing. I did when you went in the second 6 minutes, when you came out, when you said, we were finishing, I, I caught myself that I didn't fall asleep because I know I wasn't asleep, but I definitely had my mind wasn't racing or wasn't thinking of other things, but it was almost thinking of nothing. So that's why I thought, like, am I asleep? um, so that's actually the most I've felt, I guess, in a relaxed meditative state, but I was thinking of nothing.
Yep. And that's okay. And sometimes that's the first step, just to zone out a little bit and experience the mind being quiet. So be sure to see article number 77 about centering practices, because that describes a number of waking meditations. If your mind's racing that much, you won't do well trying to sit and meditate, quite likely. So use what I just mentioned, and then let me know if you have any follow-up questions or problems, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And by the way, we have a couple more questions, and I'm glad to continue on here. Jen, you're up next.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you so much for this. This is my first time.
My pleasure.
And yeah, so very, very similar experiences and thoughts as Nicole, actually, for the most part. In the first one, I did have like imagery of my son. But again, I was thinking that I came up with it.
Sure.
But it didn't, it still was special and it still felt there was a realness to it for me. Um, and then in the second one, I tried to I tried to just feel him more. And I was having some bizarre sensations, I have to say. My eyes were twitching and I had like a pulsing pressure up my arm and some numbness. And I let myself kind of accept that maybe he was touching me.
Hmm. Nice.
And yeah, that was my experience. Um, you know, it was, I just have to say, I find it kind of cruel and unusual. I get how the vibrations work, but I think when you're new in the grief, that's when you need the contact the most, but that's when you've got the lower vibrations. So that feels really unfortunate to me, but I get it. But I've struggled with that because it's been about a year and a half as well for me.
Yeah.
So it's still relatively early on. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I'll add that to the list of things I talk to God about when I pass on. Like, shouldn't people get a break? Shouldn't they get a pass, especially early on? I know these are the laws of physics, but can't we change them a
Yeah,
little?
right?
So, your child's name?
Eli.
Nice. Well, I'm sure Eli is proud of you in the same way with all the parents. I mean, you're out there trying. And keep in mind, and this popped in today, and I think it was a message from somebody. This isn't a Ouija board, we're not sitting around a candle. This isn't a seance, this isn't a woo-woo. This is just realizing that life is here right now, and that our biggest enemy to perceiving them is the brain. And again, because it thinks it knows everything. And years ago, when our grandkids were little, I was reminded of the earthly indoctrination process we put our kids through. With my own kids, I was too busy to really appreciate it. But with the grandkids, like, your name is Stella. This is the color red. You are 4 years old. And, so here they are, and we all are expansive beings of energy, consciousness, love, and light. But to have this earthly experience, we have to pack all that into this little earth robot suit. And, and we have to take it seriously to learn our lessons. So that's okay. But it's even better if you can realize that even a little bit and expand your senses, expand your you said you let yourself feel and it felt real. So yeah, go with the feelings. I'd say would be your biggest indicator or compass on that. So you know what to do going forward, and you know how to get hold of me, right?
Yes, thank you so much. Can I just ask quickly, you were talking about, was it Joseph Campbell?
Mm-hmm.
And you said that there was someone interviewing him and I didn't catch the name.
Bill Moyer,
Oh, Bill Moyer. Okay.
Moyer. Yeah,
Yes,
just
got you.
I mean, you listen to those two guys. Um, and then also, there was a famous radio personality named Tom Campbell who interviewed Joseph. No, wait, Tom, oh crap, I forget his last name. Anyway, he interviewed, but the name of the book is An Open Life. And that's another one. It just highlights Campbell's teaching so much. So yeah, listen to the audios, read the book. It just answers so many questions and I'm like, and why don't we teach this in at least junior high school? It's pretty important stuff, but maybe someday.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care, dear one. All right. Nicole. Well, let's see. Nicole, have you been on before? Because we have Amy's, oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at microphones muted. All right, we're actually over time, and I think that's everybody then. So wonderful. You know the resources. Helping Parents Heal has so many things there. So some of you are first timers, some of you are fairly recent. Get hold of us, mark at soulproof.com. Use the resources at the helpingparentsheal.org website. And just know that whatever you need, we have it because we've been doing this for what, 11, 12 years. So we know the answers to your questions and we have the solutions to your needs. So reach out, and God bless you all during the holidays. I understand that can be a little rough, but I said the word can. It doesn't have to be because it depends on your perspective. You know, we interviewed all these shining light parents, and let me just screen share real quickly again because this is so important. And so we're looking at the Helping Parents Heal. I type H and there it is. So Lynn and I set up interviews with, so we're looking at the top tab, YouTube videos, then affiliate leader and caring listener interviews. And we interviewed 130 of these most amazing parents. And then the best of from their interviews is in the book, Shining Light Parents Speak. So there's so much to be learned from these parents. Well, one of them was just that little shift from, so holidays are coming up and you could say, woe is me, you know, my child's out here with us. Why me, God? You know, life's unfair. Or you can say, and this is what so many of these parents said, thank you, God, for letting us have this angelic child for 16 or 32 years or whatever. We are so grateful to have his or her presence. And we are going to celebrate knowing that they're with us right now, even if we can't sense them, maybe a little. And so we're going to act as if. And they'll set a plate and utensils at the table. And Lynn, would you like to share a bit, please, about what you've learned, how parents can go through the holidays in a more evolved way?
Well, I'll admit the first few years were a challenge for us because, our son Devin transitioned right during Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we avoided him for a while. But yeah, now we celebrate him. We celebrate our son. We decorate the tree for him and enjoy putting up all his childhood decorations. And just, Mark is right. Our kids are here. They want us to be happy. They want us to celebrate. And it may take you a year or two to get there, but you will get there.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's not, you don't go from 0 to 120 overnight. It can be stepwise, but people have found that even if you can do that a little bit, it lightens the pain and shortens the duration of the deep grieving. So put that to use, reach out, and we will see you next month. God bless.
All right. Love you guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you and happy holidays.
Bye, Cheryl. See you soon. Well, Cheryl, you're muted.
Okay. Bye, Lynn. Bye, Mark. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
You're
Love you
welcome.
guys.
Thank you so much.